Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnan. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
What is up, Eli?
Oh, nothing much. Just drinking some tea.
Yellow milk tea?
No, hopefully not. I
Fair.
should have scrutiny checked, but
Fair enough. I'm doing well. Paladins, a podcast at the Epic Table Games side quest. Once again for our weekly show. I was really excited. I had showed you just before we had started our episode here. I have a removable splint for my big arm owie. I still can't open my hand. I have to have a second surgery. But the comfort of being able to take off my security blanket of a splint is nice. It always goes back on within the next 20 minutes. The other day, however, I had it off for a few hours.
whoa, amazing progress.
It felt nice. It's really weird because if I try to use my hand in certain positions, it just gets really exhausted and it's like it doesn't want to work at all anymore. Like don't open or close. It's nuts. Super localized. Really weird.
What is your thinking on permanent injuries in RPGs?
Man, so after this just happened, I was all on board with the idea of crippling injuries for my players, but getting to experience one where it is literally disabling. I mean, by all accounts right now, I am technically disabled with the use of my left hand. I cannot use it to do anything. It's there and it sucks. It sucks so bad I instantly thought, man, I don't know if I'd want to ever put a player through this shit. But on top of that, as I have gotten more used to this useless, don't do anything with hand, I'm going back. I'm like, you know what? Saddling players with this shit would be phenomenal. But hey, you have a busted hand, you got a broke ass leg, dude. You're riding a peg leg prosthetic. You can't run at 30 feet around. You're at 20 on a good day. All right, take some painkillers. This is role play. It's in the name of the game.
Now, do you think that's something that's good to introduce mid-game? You're fighting the giant, and not only does he do 30 points damage, but also lops off the end of your leg. Or do you think it's more something that the players need to commit to at the very beginning of the game, with a hackmaster quirk and flaw?
I struggled with this one at first because I have introduced the house rule for that in both my Saturday games, and I had my players vote on it before we started game. I wanted everybody to approve of that.
Now, what is your house rule again? Is this the one where if they drop to 0 but their death flag is still down, then they just get a debilitating injury?
No, but that's not a bad idea either. I like that. This is specifically for when they experience massive critical hits, they are at risk of debilitating injury or losing body parts. They all agreed, we're willing to go that route. And I haven't had a scenario where somebody has gotten to lose a body part yet. So when it eventually happens, it will be mid-game, but they did agree to it before the entire campaign started. So I think that's really an appropriate way to do this.
How are you going to rule that like at the table? Like, let's say you're at the table, you're in the middle of a combat. That giant just rolled a critical that meets your qualifications for massive damage, right? Massive damage.
Mm-hmm. That's just the words I chose for the show. In particular, I actually have a third-party supplement for Pathfinder, Torn Asunder, which is a critical hit book. It's all about critical hits, debilitating injuries, losing body parts, etc. I think it's incredibly interesting. That's where I pulled a lot of my ideas from. But it's really easy just to take the big categories that they have and follow along with those same rules.
Do they have like several tables to roll on?
Multiple,
like,
I think.
Location, severity, and stuff like that. Oh, lovely.
Yep. And it generally requires a few more rolls, which suck. But I've started to actually pre-roll a lot of my base rolls. So like I'll have a list of D20 rolls that have been pre-rolled, and then I just take that number, add the modifiers as necessary. Not only does it speed up my need, because I already have a roll presented, I also don't have to roll dice. So you know how your players are always like, oh shit, he's rolling dice. They don't hear that. So all they get is the result. Which also really ties into my having them roll initiative first. Like that's one of the first things we do before game.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I have found that for the Hackmaster critical table, like it uses a D10,000.
A D10,000?
Yeah, you can either use two D100s, like one as the thousands or 10,000. One is the higher one is the lower one.
Uh-huh.
Or I've got, I think from Chessex, I can't remember, but at some convention I found like D10 dice. They're a little bit oversized, but then on the bigger ones it has like several zeros instead of just the 1 0 that you have on a D10.
Or like the double zeros for your percentiles.
Yeah, and so this one has like sides that are like 100, 200, 300, 400. And then I have another one for thousands. And that one's really like there is some extra rolling involved in the Hackmaster critical tables, but I found the players really love it when you can be like, you got criticaled, you hand them these big D10,000 dice, and you're like, roll me what happened.
Wow.
Or for fumbles, they've got a D1000 chart.
Okay. Nice. That's incredible. I've honestly, throughout my experience in tabletop games, have never come across a D10,000 or a D1000. That's absurd. And I love rolling massive amounts of dice, but that is to the point where even I would say is absurd.
Have you come across those like D24s that I think DCC uses?
I have seen them, and I've had somebody suggest that Epic Table Games actually start making them.
Excuse me.
Along with I think it was a D36, a 36-sided die. For a specific game. Weird. Like really uncommon dice. But again, I mean, uncommon dice just sit around waiting for somebody to buy. And I can't have a million things sitting around. My office is already full of stuff.
Do you not like custom dice?
I love custom dice, but I've got no need to roll a D36.
Unless you have a game that uses one, right?
Right, which I don't. All of mine are either D6 based, D20 based, or D10s.
If you find a game that does have like dice that you don't have, does that discourage you from picking it up or trying it?
No, I'll actually buy the specific dice I need for the game. I also use a dice roller on my phone if I have to. Use something where, in fact, thinking about that in particular, that was a consideration I was using as I'm developing my current dice pool system, because I've modified it a little bit to make math easier. And my thought was, do I want to make custom dice because it would be easy, or do I just want to develop rules for each die? And I'm going to do it both ways. So if I can do that, I know that every other system is similar. If it uses D6s, it's going to have some sort of conversion where, you know, this symbol is a 2, or this symbol is a 4, or this symbol is a success, and the 6 is a success, etc. So I'm not discouraged. I've got plenty of dice. I got Fallout dice, Legends of the Five Rings dice. fate dice, fudge dice, regular dice.
Do you have a preference for, you said to make math easier? Are you thinking about using a system where instead of there are number values, it's rather like symbol based, like, oh, 1 success, 2 success, or advantage, disadvantage, triumph, despair?
Yeah. So the original idea for the system was going to be a contested roll, and I'm still going to utilize contested roll, but instead of total number minus total number, etc., it's going to be success versus success. So if the attacking player rolls 2 or 3 successes, and the defending player is rolling a defense roll, and he gets 2 successes, obviously the attacker still has the 1 higher success, so he would win. Vice versa, if the defending player has 3 successes and the attacker only has 2 successes, the win would go to the defender, and he's the one that would get the the attack point.
Cool.
So, excuse me. That way, it just really, like I said, it simplifies it. That way, they're not doing, man, I got 47. You got 22. What's 47 minus 22? We have to be able to speed up the playthrough with that, and that's something that when we talked with Trent about Bonfire, that was one of the things that he mentioned, was ways to kind of make it simple.
Have you started implementing that in your regular games, or
No.
That's still Pathfinder 2? How are your regular games going, by the way?
They're fun. I mentioned last week about how we had a world-changing event in our weather patterns, and that was a 2-week ago game. Last week, I had another world-changing event from my Twisted Justice players.
So this is going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, this is their world-changing event. Oh man! So we heard about the cracking of the mountain and the the caldera blowing plumes of black soot and smoke into the sky, and how that would carry over into the lowlands where the other party is. Well, the lowlands, Twisted Justice decided that they were going to go deep dive into some shit, and didn't realize that they were going to get into a trap door that led to the Hollows, which is more of like the undead place. So there's a trap door, led to a room with a portal into the Hollows. The portal is always open. Well, when they were on their way back, because of an entire, it's a roost of.
All right,
bats.
just what did they do?
I'm getting there. They broke the trap door. So when they left the entire roost of Ahuls, the Ahuls can get out into Animar.
Oh.
And there was no way for them to travel into the mainland because overland travel is sealed off. They needed a magical portal. Now they have one, and they have a way out.
So they've released a horde of new monsters into your world?
Yep.
How, I mean, obviously, there's now new monsters to fight. Are you going to have your other party just encounter these creatures or hear rumors about attacks?
Well, Ahuls they can't fly, but they can kind of feather fall. So they have to travel unusually. It'll probably take a while, but contingency heroes want to head west through the lowlands. They will encounter them.
Oh, when you say a hool, that's like a winged bat cryptid?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. So
okay.
If you're familiar with Batman, the animated series, do you remember Man Bat then? Like the Batman version, but he was a man bat?
I mean...
He's like an emaciated man bat. He's a man who looks like a bat with wings, can't fly, and he's kind of emaciated.
Okay, I don't know the official one, but I definitely knew about some joke man bats. So
that's the best way to put it. He's not even a were. He's like a hybrid form werebat, but emaciated.
I take it.
So, yeah, and man, so this got me thinking too. I want your opinion on this because it's nuts. I feel like I'm shooting shit off at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I'm sorry.
Take your shot.
So, the Ashland Mountains have been cracked open, and the dragon sleeps below, and he's known as the father of all dragons of Animar. I was thinking with the black soot and smoke that he also, well, not he, but tiny drakelings were also released into the sky. And drakelings were not really a thing. Like, people haven't seen them, but approximately the same size as a medium creature, can fly like a normal drake, probably around CR3 to CR7, ranging on size and age. Because I really want drakelings to eat ahools and kind of intertwine some of this shit a little bit more. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea, because I was worried that with everything you told me last week, that you had this huge story about what the players did and how it caused this earthquake cracking.
Yep.
But there was, like, you had this big lore, but the players really saw none of it. And
Correct.
there wasn't really any way for them to figure it out unless they were like, oh, somehow the dragon woke up. But I like that if there's now these drakelings, dragonoids, whatever you want to call them, now that they're in the world, like, I like that that's a tangible, like, the players can go, oh, the world cracked, dragons came out, wait, isn't there rumors of a dragon that lives, under the earth? Like, I think that's a great chain. And you can also tie in some rumors where you can almost directly say that to the players by, two villagers talking to each other, or like, dragons have returned. Oh God, we must be cursed by whatever large dragon's name is, or something.
Right. I like that. And the reason I haven't poured in too much previous lore directly to the players is because one of my players specifically is hunting it down. So he's getting a whole lot more on the way to fill it all in. Otherwise, I would end up not piecemealing it for him like we are kind of now. He would get info dumped because I'm excited for him to know. I got to calm that down. You ever have that problem? You get really excited, so you just want to pile it on your players?
I think I did have that for a while, and I think I overcorrected for a bit in too much the wrong direction. And so now I'm trying to find a happy medium where I can pass enough information to the players, but not have kind of exposition dumps.
Sure.
So I think in the past I've gotten carried away. I can just go over folks' heads.
Yeah. And that is one thing I concern myself with so much lore. But what I'm finding is at the current juncture, what I want for the end game feels like it's slowly changing.
Yeah, good. That should be what happens. I think the players should have some impact on how the story ends. Otherwise, it's not a group event.
You're absolutely right. And I just really don't understand how I went from the world of Animar to Cthulhu is really fucking shit up right now. Like, that's a wide breadth of distance between those two options.
To be fair, you introduced a deity level Cthulhu creature to the party very early, so that probably had an effect.
It did, but it was supposed to be a throwaway moment. And you know what? I don't have throwaway moments with my players.
Yeah, I mean, at any point, if you ever introduce something to your players and you say, oh, I'm just going to do this once and never have to do it ever again, the players will fall in love with whatever that is. And they will want to do it 100 times.
Absolutely. And I know that, and I forgot it. And I'm not crying. I'm really excited, but now I'm like, shit, fuck it. We're going this way now.
How have you been doing your information dumps to this player? Because I've been doing a lot. I've been trying to deliver my information dumps in more handouts or materials that the players can peruse or return to later and again and again. And so that way they can kind of interact with it as much or as little as they want.
They get a handout. It goes in their notebook. So they get everything. In fact, I now also have another player who's super lore based in my other campaign, my Twisted Justice campaign. So I have one in both. So they get handouts. For example, Twisted Justice player just got a 4-page handout full of multiple journal entries. And one of the journal entries was written in a Caesar cipher that he chose to decode if he wanted to. And he did. And he gets a few other handouts. He's part of the Order of the Eastern Star, which investigates more occult shit. I gave him a small minor artifact so he could send messages to the Eastern Star and they could send messages back. He gets replies in like postbox style format. It's kind of neat.
I think it's a good way to interact with players that are looking for a little bit more or are really willing to like invest more time in your game. Because that you can't always at the table give the players that want to invest more and still like have an equal opportunity kind of in the limited amount of time you need for a session.
I absolutely agree. And I think the players who want to invest more and do invest more should be rewarded with more. But again, like you had said, sometimes at the table it's kind of hard. So I make sure when I come across that to say, hey, yes, I will make sure you get that by next game. You will have everything you asked for. And I learned a long time ago that players don't like to run around and getting information that's irrelevant. They'd like to continue moving forward. So now most of my players will only act with characters who just know shit. I kind of lay out the stuff like, hey, these are the people who are going to be able to help you out. And they choose who they go to when.
Gosh, my party does not like to ask any questions. Someone will give them a hint or a rumor. Someone will be like, yeah, I heard there was gold in those hills. And the party will be like, all right, Golden Hills, let's go. And then they just all get up and they're like, we're leaving now. And then they're just in the hills. And then they're like wandering around and they're like, where do we find this gold? Why are we not finding gold? And you could have asked for a guide. You could have asked for miners. Like, do you even have mining equipment?
That's great. We have swords and pickaxes. I love that. Your party is amazing.
It can sometimes be a little bit frustrating because the party will be like 2 or 3 sessions into the wilderness trying to find gold and they're lost and they're like, man, we just feel like we have like no direction to find this gold. It's like,
so
you just walked out hoping to find it.
Now you know that about your party. Do you ever consider giving them a little bit more information?
And
like, I heard there was gold by the big tree next to the waterfall cliff shaped like a skull.
And that's kind of what I've started doing is when I give rumors, I try to give more details. And I've also, like through introducing NPCs, like when they're out wandering through the woods, eventually they might find a shepherd or someone that is willing to be a guide and can take them immediately to it. And I'll do ways to emphasize how having NPCs or interacting with NPCs can make their journeys even quicker or easier.
Right.
So definitely an element is on me as well in when I do give them information, making sure that it is as clear and informative as possible. And it doesn't feel like pulling teeth.
Right. And that's a lesson I learned a few years into when I started DMing. My players hated super vague information, but my thought was, why not everybody you talk to is going to know what you're looking for. But that's not the game they want to play. So everybody they talk to has to know something to further the story. I made that correction. And the other one was stop sending them on missions that have nothing to do with their mission that they're on. Like, this kid needed help and he sent them to go look for something and it sent them into a giant scorpion den. Absolutely no reason to do so based on the story, but they were like, let's go help whoever we want. Yeah, I got chastised for that one too, regardless of how funny I thought it was. But I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, at my table, we definitely do a lot more kind of free form. The party really decides which direction they go based off of the number of rumors.
Mhm.
So we don't quite have any main quest line yet. I do think that is something that I'm kind of getting ready to introduce. And at the same time, they've gone through. I've introduced a lot of story hooks along the way, and some of which they've chosen to follow, and some of which they've chosen not to.
Yep.
And when I usually make a true story hook, I'll usually have what's actually happening, and then I'll try to make a long-term effect as well. So, if they kill the ghoul, then there's not going to be a ghoulish uprising in 3 months.
Right.
And so the party at this point has kind of chosen enough storylines and passed up enough storylines, or even failed storylines, where there's now a city that's a complete plagued wreck, and there are some undead on the loose, and some of these things are going to be reintroduced and form a larger plot line.
I like that, and that's very similar to how I do things now. And it's been great now that I've actually based so much around my characters' backstories and knife blocks from the beginning, because as they have their own personal shit to deal with, they're starting to affect the world, and they're building their major story arcs, which sometimes the major story arc and the character arcs are semi-conflicting, and they're both rather time sensitive. So as they devote time to one thing, the other thing starts to get worse. As they switch gears, it starts to get worse. But I never make it so there's a whole, we have to travel 7 months in between two locations. They're somehow always in the middle of their own shit, just like a good movie. So,
yeah, I think that's the pacing is very important. Making sure that you're, even in all your sessions, you're having things to interact with.
Yeah, and I think both my parties have started to realize that story has been super important up to this point, but stuff is starting to happen much quicker now. They're going to start feeling way more pressure, especially because we have minimal combat so far. But now, Drakelings, Ahools, shit to fight. One of the teams are going on a dungeon dive. Haha. They're turning this game into exactly what they want, and they haven't bitched or complained yet, so I'm excited.
What level have you gotten them to, and how long has this game been going?
So Contingency Heroes has been going since, I want to say we started just before Christmas. We started at level 3. Their next game is this Saturday, and they are still level 3. We play bi-weekly. We've missed 2 games. The Twisted Justice is currently level 5, started off at level 3, and we started before Thanksgiving. And we've missed a few more games, but they made it up 2 levels, and a lot of that was through a little bit of downtime activities.
I think my group is just starting to hit about level 8.
Okay.
And we've been playing for 3.5, I want to say almost 4 years.
The dead silence is, I'm blown away, Eli.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to be able to have this consistent of a game. Although kind of maybe in hindsight, maybe I'm a little bummed out that it's taken me 3.5, 4 years for them to finally have some big story arcs come back and bite them, but or a main plot line.
I think the pacing is phenomenal. It's the near 4-year mark and a level that I'm blown away by. That, in fact, that you've lasted in a campaign for 4 years. Most of people's tables don't last longer than 6 months. The DM will get a new idea and be like, let's switch shit up. So
we play online, and I'm also benefited by the fact that two of the players in the game is my dad and brother. So
Micro shots.
Yeah, micro shots. I can bully them into playing, but oftentimes we'll meet even if we don't play. Like this Sunday, I'm having to cancel the game coming up so I can prep for GaryCon. But several of my players are actually just going to hang out on Sunday and make some pre-gens for my games and chat and hang out. So
nice. I dig that. I dig that. I tell all my players, like, hey, when it comes to Saturday game days, you guys can show up as early as you want. We'll hang out, bullshit, play some games. If people can't make it, you guys are always still more than welcome to come over. I don't force them to, but I would love to. Like, hey, it's game day regardless. If these guys can't make it, everybody else show up. We still do something. But I don't know. I feel like I was a Nazi.
Yeah, consistency is my big thing. So
I get it. I love that.
Glad I've got some consistent players.
Well, that and like I said, you guys get together regardless. So you may not further the story. You have a protege story, other things you can do. You guys can just hang out. That consistency really helps meld everything together, and I love that. I don't think I could deliver it in a way that would be just the right forcefulness or suggestive enough. It would either sound like a demand or a weak suggestion, like, if you wanna, but you don't have to, kind of thing. And I'd be like, your ass is still here. You better show up. Shoes off. 5 o'clock, my place. But I dig it.
Have you been? I know you picked up some of the Hackmaster 4th edition stuff. Have you been reading through any of those books or the Hacklopedia?
I read 4 pages today.
Woo!
I know it sounds crazy, but because of the ARM issue, holding books open is retardedly difficult. My schedule is already hectic. I work 10-hour days. I've got 2 classes a week that I literally run between 16 and 19-hour days, at least twice a week. On top of trying to prep 2 games. So those 4 pages are important, Eli, because you mentioned alignment, and I was like, ooh, Eli says the Hackmaster handles this well. So I made sure to check it out.
Yeah, I'll just summarize the way that 4th edition does it. It uses the 9 alignments that D&D or Pathfinder uses. It's like the lawful, chaotic, good, evil axes. And it uses like a point system. So if you make an infraction on your alignment, the GM will secretly make a note. And if you reach 9, then the GM will inform you you've been pushing the limit on your alignment. You've now changed alignments. I think tied with that, you also lose a level of experience.
Yes,
and
you do.
A number of honor. And your honor is kind of like a meta currency about how, like, your character's reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is, if you have more than 5 points, there's a number of creatures and characters that can perform alignment audits. Like a unicorn can run into you and do an alignment audit, and that can force an alignment change if you've got 5 infractions. And
yes, that scrutiny I liked.
And one thing is you can lose infraction points if you do things kind of hyperly focused on your alignment. So if you do something totally out of character, but then do kind of things to make up for it, you can kind of bring yourself back into alignment.
Neutral territory.
What do you think about the system?
So what I like is that the examples that they give for the specific 9 points on the R alignment scale, it's very similar to how I played as a player in D&D 3.3.5. Our DMs would keep track of alignment, like if we did shit that was totally against base, and we would slowly wax and wane when it came to alignment, which is the basis for my opinion on alignment now. But Hackmaster allows a little bit, actually enough gray area in all of the alignments For example, that I really enjoyed, they mentioned lawful good, which is a requirement for their paladin. In that example, they say, if the paladin is out in the woods and orcs who are always evil, and will spawn evil orc babies to do more evil shit, to spawn more evil orc babies in a repetitive cycle, would he take them back to the village for justice? Maybe. But if there's nobody around, he has the absolute authority to slay them. Like, he doesn't have to, he can make that conscious decision. Like, this is the way it needs to be done because this sort of criteria is here. But it distinctly says, would he torture them? No, unless it was the only way to get them to talk for information he absolutely needed. Like, all right, I like this. The example is clear and concise. It allows for that flexibility. I don't want to call it a gray area because there are certain things that have to logically make sense, but that flexibility is not as rigid as what I think the Dungeons and Dragons alignment system has kind of been shoehorned into.
Yeah, I think Hackmaster 4th Edition is a game that really knows like its target and its audience, and it really plays into that. So when they're doing all these descriptions for alignments, they assume, they make all these assumptions. Oh yeah, our players are gonna be as murder hobo-y as possible. They're gonna push the envelope, and it actually encourages players to push the envelope.
Yeah,
like they have the knight class, but then they have like the knights errant class, and the knights errant class is like, you're not lawful good, but you're a knight and you generally follow a code. And then it talks about your various codes, and I think one's for fighting an armed opponent. It's like, here's all the excuses that you can use to attack someone. Like, 1, if they're armed, of course they're armed, fight them. 2, if you have the drop on them, well, they were gonna attack you. If they don't look armed, well, they're probably like a mage.
Probably. I hate the joke there that it sounds like the common police code, but
yeah. But it basically it talks about like all the 6 main reasons why you'd want to attack someone, and it basically gives you an excuse for attacking someone for any reason, no matter what.
But as long as you have your ass covered, your alignment's covered too.
Yep.
So yeah, I like it. And I think overall their position on all of them is really well done. In fact, they even call out the fact that certain alignments don't mean to be played like chaotic good. People generally consider chaotic stupid. But chaotic good doesn't mean chaotic stupid. Like, you're not going to risk your life to do certain things, but you know that you're going to put the individual over the societal goods when they align with your worldviews. I like how they spell that out. Now it's enough to say, nope, chaotic good is just another way to play super stupid. And
yeah, I like how they have a system around alignments.
Yeah.
And they just give you a framework to use it. I think there's just a little bit too much put into alignment in like 5th edition Pathfinder, but then not a real system about how to I think my internet just went out.
Yep, we're catching it.
Oh.
You're back now. Kind of.
Oh man. Disconnect and reconnect. I don't know how much you can hear. Ooh, I'm back.
I got you now.
All right. Slight technical difficulties.
That's all right. We got local recording today.
Are there any other systems out there that you like the alignment? Like how they handle alignment?
There are 2 that I distinctly remember that I like, and one of them is more of a morality system, which is really found in the World of Darkness series. So instead of good, bad, chaos, law, you're really looking at what do I find morally acceptable. And you can really have an entire range. You know, I don't think killing is morally acceptable, but lying, cheating, stealing, doing all these other things, totally fine. Vice versa. I don't mind killing somebody, but I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to cheat somebody out of something. I'm not going to steal anything from a dead body. I like the morality system.
So what you're describing is like when you make a character, do you have like two columns, one that's like acceptable and one that's unacceptable? And then you've got the lying, killing, cheating, all those, and you have to put them? Or how do they frame it?
I believe, if I remember correctly, World of Darkness is essentially a single scale system. 0 is balanced between the two, and I think it's like -10 to +10. Your negatives are more immoral, and your positives are more moral, and it's kind of blanketed. You slightly tend to be more immoral. You do more immoral things. Your choice.
So you would have a number, or you'd have a number for each one of those.
Just
actions?
one sliding scale. The multi-point system is something that I started using when I have players put their character backgrounds together from that game mastering document by Brian Johnson. And it's not a solid set number. What I do is I just help use it to gauge what they feel is a good balance about who their character is. Like, kind of things are they okay with? What are they not okay with? And then I don't like to play with alignment itself, because even the best of characters can have a bad day. Doesn't mean that.
Do you think that would be something that would be useful to like that GM's document?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would be useful to have as a player, like with your character sheet, or maybe even in your folder? Like where your players could open it up and be like, oh, here is my character's morality. I've written it down. If I ever want to reference it or just refresh what I thought when I was making this character, oh, boom, here it is.
Believe it or not, they all have a copy in their folders. So when I stripped out what I wanted from that document for the character backgrounds, I made sure that when I created their folders, everybody got a character builder section in their folder. So it covers that, everything to do about building the character that I wanted them to be able to build. They can always go back and check out their morality sheet if they chose to fill it out, because it's optional. Not everybody chose to fill it out, but some have.
Okay. What's the survey? How many of them filled it out?
I think 3 of them out of all of my players.
So if 3 out of 900, since your tables are huge?
Yeah, like 3 out of 13.
I like do think 1%. That is valuable, but I wonder if being buried, like it's kind of ease of access. Like if it's buried inside their character creation process, are they always looking inside that character creation process?
Most of them specifically only have their folder open to their character sheet. A lot of them don't remember when they get information or what information they put in there, but it's there. Some of them just forget to completely check what information they're getting filtered anyway. So it's okay. It's there for whenever they realize they have those devices to use.
And what was the other system of morality that you said you liked?
Old school classic Marvel superheroes. TSR's 1984 game uses karma and popularity. Karma is your experience points, and you spend karma to level up and buy new abilities. Your karma does not get to influence your popularity, but your popularity can influence your karma. And so your karma hits a certain number, and then it can influence your popularity. Now, the idea there is you do not want to elevate your popularity to the point of godhood. You do not want to be worshipped. You're a superhero. You have to keep a level head. So you have to balance your good karma and your popularity to stay in a positive light with the public relations without getting to the point of being worshipped as an idol.
That's kind of the way Hackmaster 4th edition uses honor. So like honor is your kind of meta resource on like how you're perceived. And so if you have, there's kind of a sweet spot where if you don't have a lot of honor, or if you have a lot of honor, you have low bonuses. But once you get towards the middle, you have the best honor dice. So you can kind of become overconfident in your own abilities if you have too much honor. So it can kind of encourage players to, while you want to build these resources, you also want to spend them.
Right. I like that. I think it's really neat. the Marvel superheroes game that I had played in, we did not get to experience a long enough campaign for it to really translate heavily. But we had some characters and players that were starting to push the envelope into that direction, and it was already intense because character creation in the game itself is actually 100% random. So it made for interesting stories.
Do you think an alignment system is necessary?
So I think alignment itself is a fantastic guide. It's just a element that I don't think should be like a mechanical element, but has a good mechanical element when done properly. Like I think that paladins in general should be some form of good. Their good should align decently with their gods, hence why they curry favor. But again, they can have bad days. So just because you are a good character does not mean that you're 100% good all the time. Like,
So
people have bad days.
if there's only one class in your game that has to have an alignment, should every class have alignment?
No, I don't think any class should really have an alignment. You should just act morally conscious to your
Well, I
deity.
more mean like, does a character who is playing a ranger, do they need to have an alignment if their class or like they don't actually have any interaction with alignment? I mean, the only thing that Pathfinder and D&D, it's like spells, right? Protection from evil and that detect
Yeah, there's some.
spells.
Now, one thing I have done, and I try to stay conscious to do in that case, because you mentioned it, is if my players choose not to really roll with an alignment, I just consider them neutral, much like an animal. Like their nature is just neutral. They're
Players
not,
are animals.
yeah, and they're usually the worst kind. But as a neutral character who does not concern themselves with the morality of certain issues, and I treat them neutral, certain things don't affect them, obviously, like protection from good, protection from evil, being protected from those, sure, but harm evil, harm good, they just get passed over. They don't get the benefits from some of those things, so they don't get the negatives either. But I do not require anybody to choose an alignment, but anybody who does choose an alignment, I do require them to morally follow the essence, not as written, but as intended.
See, I think you said that you didn't really care about
Mm-mm.
alignment having mechanical effect.
Nope.
In my opinion, if I'm using alignment, I want and or need it to have some sort of mechanical or game impact.
Mhm.
Because if it is there just as a role play guidance, then I think there's a lot better or easier ways to do that, or to have a sense of your of your character without using that like alignment style terms.
I agree. With a lot of that, and it's how I ended up just looking at alignment is, again, just a needle on a compass over a scale. How they generally act. There is effects, there is consequences, but the mechanical changes and differences are, again, they're generally as the rules are laid out. But when I'm looking at it as a whole, it has a minimal effect versus their previous actions. Because I also use renown. Renown. What's the other term that I'm looking for?
For what?
Like renown. You gain
Honor, fame, prestige.
You gain fame and popularity is the positive direction, and then the other direction, infamy. Fame and infamy. I use popularity.
Infamous.
I use like fame and infamy. So better deeds, higher good points. Worse deeds, lower good points. That's not tied to their alignment. That's how people interact with them. Their alignment issue, I specifically lay out for the gods at this point.
Yeah, I really enjoy, because I like alignment as roleplay guidelines, but I really want players to also be rewarded for choosing a set of guidelines and then sticking with it and really like embracing that. I want them to then be rewarded for essentially role playing well.
Yeah, I again love it, and I think I told you about the story where I had a player who chose to be a paladin or a cleric. I forgot which class. He chose his alignment for it, and he decided to completely go against everything he said he was, and he lost his alignment and lost his paladinship or clericship, lost the connection with his god. There were real consequences. So, like I said, if you're going to say this is what you're going to do, I expect you to kind of go that route. That's a pretty big contentious point for some DMs. I think you and I are saying very similar things. We're not quite 100% aligned, but I think we're saying very similar things.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more on the side of if you make it like a role play decision for your character and then are violating that down the line, I'm in the favor of kind of smacking down on that. You know, if you made a character decision and now you're 360ing it, play the character.
Yep. Whereas everybody has bad days. Alignments between you and your god, the people around you. I mean, when's the last time somebody walked up and said, "Hey, Eli, you chaotic good today?"
Oh man, I ran into a paladin the other day, and it was a rough alignment audit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, we gotta do a little bit of editing. It's going to bring us down to time. Do you have anything that you want to give a quick shout out as we wrap up tonight?
Shout out Gary Con. Oh, we're going to have to change when we record next week.
Fair enough. We will we'll talk about that after this episode.
Oh yeah, if you're at Gary Con, play some Hackmaster with me or come say hi.
Are you scheduled to run a game each day of the convention?
I think so. I think I'm running games, all the time.
Nonstop. Do you have drop-in spots, or do they have to register pre?
I think Gary Con's pretty good about drop-in spots. So, drop in.
Good. Hey, anybody? You hear it from Eli. Drop in for Hackmaster at Gary Con. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. You can always check us out at epictablegames.com on Facebook.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.